I would have called.
Go to your email.
Yeah, it's in your email, so
Well,
Julie should have emailed
Okay.
you, you should have gotten
You got
a couple of
email,
documents
that's
from
about
her
15
this morning.
Yeah.
And starting with
That's
the
it, yeah.
financial
Yeah.
overview.
I was
There's a
keeping
financial
an eye.
overview, and they look exactly the same, there's a financial overview and then there's a financial health.
Okay,
The overview is, it looks like that's what we're doing first,
okay,
but there's a bunch of documents to go
okay,
through.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I do like that sweater, that's cute.
Thanks.
Very Nordic.
I've got to clean this. I wake up with more bruises. I don't know what happens to me. I really don't.
You might not want to mention.
I may not want to know. Obviously, it's not pleasurable, so I'm honestly not worried about it.
I'd like to think you'd remember.
You gotta,
it.
Oh, yeah.
you gotta stop having those dreams about being a prize fighter as well.
Yeah, right.
Pow, pow. Give yourself the black eyes.
You know, my
That's what it is.
right, that's what it was. My grandfather was a boxer.
Oh, was he? Really?
He was.
My grandfather was a magician, so.
Mine was a boxer.
Anybody like coffee?
And he was
No, my grandfather was a magician. My other one started Taylor Marine. That was, Taylor Marine was his business,
All right.
sort of, when I was 2 years
All
old.
right, I
Ready?
am not on here.
All right. It is 8:42, and I call this meeting to order.
Good morning, everyone. So this morning, we're going to do the financial health, and for the old timers are familiar with what that is, but for the newbies, I was going to explain first. We do a financial overview. We don't spend much time after the audit to go through the actual numbers that are produced in the audit, so we take a few minutes and we look at the financial results for the previous fiscal year. And that's good for context as you make decisions for the budget in the new year. So with that, the first financial statement is the balance sheet for the general fund. And you can see here that the first thing that I look at when I look at a balance sheet is, how's cash doing? And that's usually where our eyes go. So I've circled that. And you can see that cash actually increased in fiscal year 23 versus 22 by $5 million for a total of $19.7 million. And the unassigned fund balance also increased from $12.2 million to $14.8 million. So I'm just going to do a lot of rounding. I'm not going to spit out the entire number. So when we go through this. The second screen shows what the financial results were. What were our revenues compared to our expenditures? And you can see in the fiscal year 23, we actually had our revenues exceeded our expenditures by $4.4 million. So I prepare this slide every year. It solves a mystery. Somebody might ask, well, how did we budget the use of surplus of $1.8 million and end up with $4.4 million in the bank, added? And so that mystery is actually provided by this slide. It shows you that we budgeted $1.8 million to use a surplus, and then we carried forward encumbrances from the previous year to the new year of 23 of $811,000, and then the council passed ordinances of $2.6 million. So that was a total budgeted use of surplus of $5,289,000. That means if every expenditure was made and every revenue came in exactly as budgeted, we would have used $5.2 million of surplus. But instead, we had revenue variances, meaning favorable revenue variances, of $4.1 million. That means we actually had $4.1 million more in revenue than what was budgeted. And that was largely due to COVID. We followed COVID, and we were not willing to give back all the numbers, so we kind of held them back that year. And we also had a new Medicaid gap reimbursement for EMS of almost $1 million that was not known until it occurred. So that was a big help. In addition, we had favorable expenditure variances where we did not expend all of the money that was budgeted. In the amount of 5.6 million. So if you added both the favorable expenditure variance to the favorable revenue variance, and take that from what was budgeted to use in surplus, you get exactly the 4.4 million. The next slide shows the water and sewer fund statement of net position. Oops. It zoomed in whether I wanted it to or not. So let's see what's going on here. There we go. As you can see, if you combine the cash and the investment pool, the cash actually declined by about $1 million. And we're going to get more into the cash in another slide where we highlight how much is in the impact and the maintenance funds. So we'll save that for when we get to that slide. We can see that we put to use some of the money that we have put on hand for projects, and it's showing that we had about $2 million that we used in fiscal year 23 to build those projects. And I when I introduced this, I should have said, I'm going to go through here very quickly, and so don't hesitate to interrupt me at any time with any questions, because I'm just going to keep going until you interrupt me. So I circled on the liability side. The current liabilities had a increase of about $500,000. The total liabilities were reduced by about $2.6 million. So we were paying off some of our debt. The net position did not change much at all in fiscal year 23. You can see there was a small increase of $220,000. This is the detail of how it changed. The revenues, the charges for services, that means the water sewer revenues increased by $1.4 million. The total operating revenues increased by $806,000. However, the operating expenses also increased by $2 million. So our net operating income actually decreased by $1.4 million. We went from a operating income in 22 of about $445,000 to a loss of $952,000. The bottom line was again about $220,000 of revenues over expenses. So this is a financial statement that's on full accrual, where all of the assets and debt are on the governmental side, and they're presented here. And you can see that we actually had a decline of our total non-current assets. It's because we had additional depreciation in the amount of $3.4 million. So our total assets increased by $7.5 million.
Keith, why do we use depreciation when we're not a taxable? Just to show
so
the
we actually have two statements. The first statement, the fund level,
right?
No assets or debt are put on at no accrual. It's just cash in, cash out. Modified accrual is what they call it. This statement, they do, so they show it to you both ways. And this is where we do capitalize the assets and show them on the statement, and we depreciate them. And we put the debt on as well. So
what is the schedule? The 39? Is it commercial? Is it a commercial depreciation? What are we using?
A straight line.
But is it 39-year basis? Or what do you?
Everything's based. We have a
Different
policy, capital asset policy, and for each asset class we have a different
Schedule.
different schedule
Okay.
term. Yeah. So this is the statement that shows you all of the liabilities. And for folks that haven't seen a governmental statement, there's some big numbers here. You can see where it says post-employment health benefits, that's OPEB. You can see we have an actuary that estimates our liability for our retirement benefits is $13.3 million. So that's put on the books. And our net pension liability is $33 million. So those are some big numbers, and this is just for the governmental funds. This doesn't include the enterprise funds. This is just for governmental. So the total liabilities is $104 million, and our net position is $17 million. The unrestricted net position is a deficit of $28.5 million. So I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to switch over to the financial health. That was just a review of the audited statements. So now we're going to go over to the financial health. And this is where we'll get into some benchmarks to compare ourselves to what benchmarks we think are either adequate or not adequate. So I'm going to get that going here. Okay, so this is the first slide with the benchmarks, and you can see it's to evaluate our total fund balance. And to the far right, we see that our total fund balance was about $21 million, and it compares our fund balance to the budgeted expenditures, and we have a ratio of 42%. You can see anything over 25% is considered to be strong, so that benchmark is considered strong for the city. This is the most important slide that we'll look at today. This is the unassigned fund balance. This is the difference between all of our assets and liabilities, and showing the portion of fund balance that's not that is spendable, that isn't encumbered by any commitments. And you can see the GFOA establishes a minimum of 2 months of expenditures. The city minimum is considered to be 3 months, and we target 4 months. So we want to stay in this quadrant right here on this, above this city minimum, in between the target and the city minimum. You can see over time that we, in 2012, we came pretty close to reaching the targeted 4 months with $10.4 million in unassigned surplus. And then over time it fell to, in FY17, we came actually to that GFOA minimum of 2 months. And then we've been climbing since then, since 17, and we have 14.8 as of 6/30/23, and 4 months would be 16.6. So we came pretty close to the 4 months line, which is a good place to be. We're in that top quadrant, 14.8. I can give you a little history just to see, well, you know, over time, what does our use of surplus look like? And this goes all the way back to 2010. And you can see, and actually 2009, you can see in 2009 and 10, we had a use of surplus. And then in 2011 and 12, we actually contributed to surplus. And over time, we've had pretty small changes to surplus. In 2018 and 19, we had a timing difference. I think we had some lease proceeds that hit and it washed, you can see. But then in 2021, we had an increase, and that was largely due to the ARP program, that we had an injection of funds there. And then I explained the 2023, where we put $4.4 million into surplus. So that gives you a feeling that, except for the 23 and the ARP in 21, it all kind of washes out. So we've come pretty close to breaking even over time. And there's an old saying, I'd rather be lucky than good, right? So just you know, we've done a good job of keeping our fund balance in line, and that's one of the most important measurements we can follow. Yeah.
So, in you saying this is the most important slide, and what it looks like is the trajectory and the health of the fund balance has been, you know, in line. But we've heard this tune of this you know, scared tune. I mean, you're not speaking to that. I mean, you're saying this is the most important slide that we have seen.
I would say, but there are other influences, and we'll see there are other influences. I use the expression "standing still, we look great."
Okay.
Right. And we'll get into
Sure.
some other pressures that we're gonna feel as we go forward.
So then, given that, I don't want to go put the cart before the horse, but then should this line, like, so the target of 4 months, do you see that to ever change where we should be targeting for anything higher than 4 months?
That's a good question, and I would say generally, no, if you're doing a good job of having a sustainable budget.
Okay.
But let's save the discussion for
Sure.
what a sustainable budget looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you have a sustainable budget, 4 months is okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next slide looks at our debt to the market value. You can see this is some good news. Look at the last few years. You can see 20, our debt was 99 million. 21, it was 92 million. So it fell by about 7 million, and you can see in 22 it fell down to 89 million, and then it fell another 7 or 8 million in 23, so we're down to 81 million. The market value of property is 2.6 billion. The ratio is 3.1. We've been very close to breaking what would be considered strong. You can see if it's less than 3%. So we've been falling. We have fallen from 4.3 to 3.1. So we're approaching what would be strong, but at this time it's considered adequate. Our debt per capita is another way to measure your debt. We have, again, the same number, 81.5 million. The population is 33,050 approximately. That debt per capita then is 2,467, and that's considered adequate as well. The annual debt service for the general fund, our debt service for fiscal year 25 budgeted is 4.4 million. The general fund budget plus our capital project fund budget is 58 million. The ratio is 7.54. Anything less than 10% is considered adequate. Water and sewer unrestricted balance has a deficit of $1 million. The operating revenue is 22 million. We have a negative 4.74 ratio, and that needs improvement. Parking authority had an unrestricted net position of a deficit of 509,000. It improved from last year from a deficit of 593,000, so that's a good change. Our revenue was 594,000. We had a negative ratio of 86%, which needs improvement. There we have the summary. I highlighted, they all stayed the same except for the overall debt per capita went from needs improvement to adequate. So we had a benchmark that moved into the good there. So that ends the benchmarks. Now we're going to move over to some of the highlights in the budget. In the general fund, the proposed budget that's been sent to you has increased the trash by $2 per quarter from $69 to $71. That's approximately 3%. We like to increase that a small amount each year instead of having a large increase at one time. There were no changes to the tax rate. There were no changes to the EMS service fee. And then there are a lot of other changes here that I could let you review as you have time. The water sewer rates, as the budget is proposed, have an increase of 9%. You saw that the operating net income of the water sewer fund had a deficit, and this is intended to help correct that. The water sewer urban services remains at 1.5. I think that the administration has plans to determine how we can get that to 2 times. The parking permits have been increased in these lots listed and in the garage by $5. There were no changes to the stormwater rates. Listing here shows you the history of the tax assessments. You can see there were no rate changes in the budget for FY25. I prepare a slide for you guys just so you can see, hey, what changed on our revenue? What were the top increases and what were the top decreases in this year's budget? So it compares the mayor's proposed budget to the current budget in the previous year. And you can see real property taxes were increased by about 1.7 million. The highway user fees were increased by 296,000. The school zone camera came back from a low of 400,000 to an estimated amount of 575,000. We had a small bump in the local income taxes of 150,000. The trash fees increased because of the rate change, and OBC is estimated to increase by 100,000. The zoo hotel room tax increased by 95,000. We had some increases in the fire prevention plan review, and we hope to receive a fire service contribution from Salisbury University, and we've added a short-term rental tax. So those were the increases. We had some decreases in that I mentioned earlier the EMS Medicaid gap reimbursement that we received in 23 of 915,000. This year it's estimated to be 811,000, so there was a decrease of 103,000. And there were some other small decreases there that you can see. So personnel, the mayor's proposed budget includes an increase of one step. As you all know, as a result of the union negotiations, an additional step may take place July 1st, with an additional step to take place to January 1st. Of course, this is what I understand to be agreed upon for the general government and the police, but not the fire union.
Fire approved it over the weekend.
Gotcha. There are some career ladder updates, and there are some merit increases. I list some of those on the next pages. We had some reclassifications. Health insurance increased by 6%, as required by Care First. The new positions that start sometime in the end of February, early March, when the SAFER grant ends, we've budgeted 12 new firefighter positions. There were some restructuring in DID. You can see we eliminated 1 of 5 construction inspectors, and we eliminated a drafting supervisor position. And the downtown ambassador was made part-time, and we've left 10 police officer positions as frozen.
That's not good. Lord.
And on the next page, there's a long list. This is just the detail for the reclassifications. I won't read those, but they're there for your review. The budget includes.
Could I ask a question? The frozen police positions. I'm questioning that because we need public safety more than anything, and I'm just looking at this as if we're down with the police department, period. And I'm just looking at this as if we're down 10 positions, then that's 10 officers that we don't have. So what do we do with our hiring?
You want to take that, Andy?
Yeah, so we traditionally have had vacancies in our police officer positions. And this time last year we were down 12 positions. Dave, when he'll be in here in a little bit, he'll tell you where we currently are. I think we have been fortunate enough to, I think in this very last round, get us to a position where we have no vacancies. I think we are able to do, because of our academy class of like 8, and then some other lateral transfers, I think we have been able to get to that 12. The academy's still not over, so we got to see if everybody makes it. One of the conversations historically that we've talked about has been, if we were to get to a position where we filled all of our vacancies, it would be part of the conversation with council if they wanted to make some adjustments with some of those frozen positions. We didn't think it was appropriate historically to unfreeze positions if you had vacancies. There's no reason to add more vacancy to the table. So years ago, we've had 7 that were frozen positions. In this past year's budget, we added 3 more to it because we were at 12 vacancies. And this was to help balance our budget last year. So that's kind of where we are.
Now, I have another question. How many officers do we have?
You're really testing me right now. Sworn officers, I believe, I will get you that number. It's like
I know the chief is holding
97 with 10 frozen, which would make it 107 for sworn. I've got it right here.
I'll bring up the authorized positions if you want.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right
I
now.
can bring that up on the screen.
You got it on the screen? Yep. Well, I've got it.
You know how my eyes are. I'm
Yeah,
having a little
yeah.
trouble seeing. I'm scheduled for cataract someday soon.
Oh.
Sworn
Look at it,
positions
that hurts.
is,
Budget book.
we have 103 sworn positions with 10 frozen. So,
April, to your point, I think one of the things we want to try and play with is an auxiliary force to handle some of the peripheral, which we're kind of inventing as time moves on. Dave, our chief, has been instrumental in trying to get that thing, and I'd like to move to maybe do that. I think that would help around the periphery rather than to augment our existing force. And we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, but there's some, other communities are using that, and it's helping. Particularly on high volume nights. So folks that want to, participate and volunteer and, have a certain range of authority, not a full-fledged officer, but it would help around the peripheral.
I understand what you're saying. I remember we had an auxiliary police department before, before. But what I'm thinking is, because of our demographics and the way we're growing, I'm just looking at, we need every officer we can get with the crime like it is. I mean, I just don't see where we should be freezing police positions. I don't see it at all. I know it may be a financial burden, but it is for the city, but we got 12 new firefighter positions.
Well, it's not new, it's just we're moving the safer over to, so we're not adding 12, it's just moving 12 from temporary to permanent.
yeah, the grant funding for
Yeah,
that
so it's not
program.
12 new, it's
Okay,
just
well, it
moving them
says
over.
on it it's 12 new.
Yeah,
I'm
so we should-
Financially, 12 new is what it.
Yeah, we should change that,
Okay,
that's
yes.
a little.
But then we have frozen positions for 10 officers. I don't agree with it. I
If
don't.
we-
I understand the auxiliary part of it, but the auxiliary is just what they are, auxiliary. Are they allowed to carry weapons? Are they allowed to, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't an opportunity to
Okay.
discuss the full-fledged,
Okay.
but it's to say it's helpful. It's helpful. It's not a replacement by any means, but
It's helpful with some of the small things, with some of the larger things. Like I said, with our demographics growing the way they are, I just think that we should not be freezing 10 police positions. That's just where I am.
Yeah, so just 2 things. Dave is our first group up.
I was gonna say, should we,
So
yeah.
if you want to have a
Just about
dynamic,
it,
and we
yep.
can talk a little bit more, but it would be the continuation of the frozen positions rather than taking more off the street. It's the ones that
Okay.
are currently not inserted. But I
Yeah.
think if we,
Yeah, let's,
Council-
yeah,
yeah.
let's
You
say
wanna-
that for chief, and then we'll dig deeper into that, and then, thank you.
So the next slide takes a look at the transfers and the grant match. And the way that the budget as proposed, it includes 70,000 in what we call PAYGO to the general capital projects. So the general fund is sending $70,000 over to help fund capital projects. We have a transfer to Ann Street of 18,000 to help fund that. There's grant match for police grants of 88,000, and grant match for field operation grants of 36,000. And this is where that safer, the cost for March through June to keep those 12 safer employees. So this is probably going to be something that we would discuss later. I heard there's a lot of different thoughts on it. Andy, the 58,000 that Muir asked for the transfer to housing first.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we wanted to save that for when ACDD comes in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's another larger discussion that likely will occur later in more detail. We have an opportunity to get a grant of 11.7 million for Safe Streets, and it comes at a price tag to the city of grant match. And I think there'll be a larger conversation about that where we'll look at all of the possibilities. But I just wanted to be clear that the budget doesn't include those two items, so that's something that we'll discuss with council. The next slide shows what general fund capital outlay. So we've put in the budget a 3-ton dump truck for $360,000. There are portable radios replacements for the fire department of $187,000. There is a replacement of fleet vehicles in the amount of $550,000. The concrete program is funded at $75,000. The surface maintenance is funded at $150,000, and the street reconstruction is funded at $700,000 for a total of $2,022,771.
Two questions. I don't know if it's purposeful to ask it now or later. Which, because I read that this weekend, which vehicles are we replacing or adding new, and then determining for the surface maintenance for DID, for the milling, crack sealing, and all that. What is the hierarchy, and like how are we determining what gets the $850,000?
Okay, I'll take both of those. We have a detailed list that we can make sure we get to you. So when we do our CIP, there is an additional spreadsheet that says we want to spend $700,000 on this. It's a list of the streets, and it's based off of a priority scale. It's something that Will Whitehead created, and it's saying, this is a priority 5. It's the highest level of need because it's based off of the current conditions. So then you go in reverse priority. There's some flexibility within that because things happen over time or new pieces. And then however much is funded is essentially how far down you go with that priority.
Okay.
Same thing holds true now with our vehicles. When we have a fleet depreciation schedule, and takes the status, the state of our vehicles, and gives them a scale. The worst, the ones at the highest that need to be replaced, and we work our way down. And we've worked our way down to about 19-20 vehicles, which is a $550,000. Something we kind of discussed this past fall. The vehicles that we needed to be replaced.
Sure.
I mean, you can keep going,
Yeah.
but we thought this is a safe number.
And then perhaps, kind of like what we saw just here recently, we may be able to recoup some of those funds if we can, cancel those vehicles either surplus or take them to auction, perhaps, if we replace them.
Some of the bigger items, some of the ones that are being replaced here are clunkers. I don't know how many, but if you
Cash for clunkers is over.
yeah, right.
Okay.
But there's yeah,
Okay.
but when we do surplus for large scale vehicles, when there may be a little bit of life,
Okay,
a
okay.
fire engine or something, you may get a little bit of money.
Okay.
For it,
All right, great. Thank you for that.
Now, Andy, I see here with my little eye as I spy on Shoemaker Pond has been decreased by $5,000. It was 25 in the CIP, and I've been doing a lot of, we're going to circle around for the conversation because I've been doing a lot of work with SU. They're waiting for us, and then I see $5,000 down.
So there is this is a Mike Drine special with his background being
Okay.
within this. But essentially, if we look at Shoemaker Pond, in the original recommendation, there's two pieces to it. There was spraying, so getting rid of the vegetation, and then there's actually like hydro raking. Hydro raking is going in there and pulling out the vegetation. It's the more expensive of the two things. There's an argument to be had that if you rip out all the vegetation, you're actually disrupting the ecosystem for the plant life. So Mike Dryden, Field Ops, has recommended that we spray first, see what that does, but don't start ripping out all the vegetation this year. So that's the reduction, is to just do, part one of part two and reassess where we land on that. So
All right, there was a third piece of this that ended up with a research to find out the chemicals that are in it that are killing the vegetation. And I have spent 18 months banging my head between Tony Sarbanes, Shoemaker Woods, and the university, and they are prepared to do a study. So the third option was we were doing nothing until we could see, because most of this is in the county, which has been dragging their feet or denying or not wanting to do anything with the pond as far as contribution. From what I understand, what I've been told over all this time, I've been working on it. And then once we get that study, we move forward with the actual recommendations to reduce the actual pollutants that go into the pond. The three top suspects are failing water and sewer septic systems in the county, waste, either it be dog, goose, whatever, and other chemicals, stuff that runs off from homes, from spraying their lawns or a weed killer, or including coming from the developments in HOAs, because all of that water goes into the ponds that then empty out into Shoemaker Pond. So where do we stand on that? Are we continuing to go forward with the study?
I think the county had 25,000 already earmarked, am I wrong?
I think they were going to contribute to it, yeah.
25. And to your point, my understanding is we've been doing this for up until Jake didn't stop it 3 or 4 years ago. So whatever we were using, and these guys are professionals, I don't know, they do this everywhere. I mean, it's a chemical that just simply kills the vegetation.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
But I'm
think-
sh-
But
yeah,
what-
there's any
but
kind
the
of
sta- but-
concern.
But the issue was, in this 18 to 20 some months conversation was, we knew about the chemical treatment. People were getting to be boo-hooed on the chemical treatment and preferred a research study, which I still think would be extremely helpful to find out. And they would even do, the mapping and everything like this to find out exactly what is polluting that pond.
I think the research project is a good plan.
Okay.
A little bit of spraying chemicals every year is a little bit of a Band-Aid. We are just addressing surface level issues to make it prettier. But if we want to change the health of that pond in general, understanding what is going on, so there's a lot going on there. But yeah, I think we can do both. We can.
So you're saying it's not mutually exclusive, not mutually exclusive?
So
Correct.
I'll
Yeah,
talk
because we're
with-
$10,000 right now in the account, so we can actually do a spraying in the next several weeks.
So I'll have, when Mike Dryden comes, we'll talk about the actual steps, because I don't wanna, because I have spent, and I know, if I'm not mistaken, Councilwoman Jackson also has spent time going down, not only to Mr. Sarbanes' property, but the whole area. And a tremendous amount of time in really finding solutions. And I don't want, this is the first I've heard that the county had 25 grand assigned to this. I don't know how they wanna use it. That's fantastic. But I did wanna,
I think initially they were thinking they were having to contribute to the level where we're gonna do the actual
Hydro raking.
hydro raking. So in substance of that, we had the conversation with Mike, who has obviously some experience, but just do the spraying this year. So we can still use the 25, but
Yeah,
just
it
use
was-
longer term.
The full, 2 years ago when we were working with Jana Potvin in this position and going through it, the plan was $60,000 for 3 years in a row to get the pond to what we thought would be, and then reconsider to see
Okay.
if we could get it to a healthy enough state that we could go back to what we used to do with the county, getting in the boats and doing their own spraying. We had just lost that direction. That's a very expensive commitment for 3 years,
Yes.
so I think,
It is.
so scaling that back for this first year to address the surface level, while we do a research project to decide how we want to handle this, but that it was not necessarily a city alone effort, because if the
But we have-
contaminants or pollutants are coming
so
upstream.
we have
down-
county input into this.
They,
Always have.
for the first time, they had agreed that they had
Okay.
some funding to be able to help, but that's, that 25K was a one-time match, so if we were going at a higher level, and we needed multiple years of this.
Well, if
we
that
hadn't gotten
25K is a match, 20 is not a match.
Well, we already had 10 in the
According to
Con-
Miss
con-
Potts, who was my first grade teacher.
Contribution was not.
Yeah, we have, we actually funded, we have 10 in an account right now, so this was
Okay.
the third.
Well, Andy, could I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
How was this
Okay.
funded prior to?
So
It-
historically, years ago, the city would pay for the chemicals, and Chuck Pool and team
Yeah.
would go out in their
And
little boats
spray
and
it.
spray. But because of the silting and the increased vegetation, it
Mhm.
got to where they could not hit parts of the pond in
Mhm.
their boat. So we kind of abandoned that project. So the idea is, how do you want to address with the entire health of the pond, from the silting end, from the increased vegetation, and it became, we got a group, Solitude, to come and say, this is what it would take. You probably need 3 years of very intense
Mm-hmm.
hydro raking and spraying to be able to get the pond back to a healthy enough place to be able to reinvest in that smaller
Okay.
scale maintenance. But we had, over time it just continued to get worse, and now it is,
Okay, we're
Well,
not
why did we
abandoning
let
the
it,
pond.
why did we let it get that bad? I mean, not just us, but the county itself allow it to get to the point where they couldn't even go out in boats.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think,
I
okay,
want to
so,
make sure we
yeah.
are we on a time crunch for 9:30. I know we started late. I want to make sure we save this question
No, we're
for
fine. We're fine.
for when Mike
I
gets
just
here.
had one more
You
thing I
want-
wanted to touch
okay,
on
gotcha.
before we have to, yeah. The Andy and Bear exhibit, I see this on here.
Mhm.
What are we gonna be doing about that?
Sure. Yeah, so the Andy and Bear exhibit, I may have just stepped out. What we have talked about with the Andy and Bear exhibit specifically is that the amount of contribution that we need to make, so our goal has been, if the city could do a quarter of it, if we could get the state or somebody else to do a quarter of it, and then if we could get, private funding for it.
Right.
That number is a little bit of a moving target. We did not get the funding in this year's state capital budget.
Okay,
And we're getting ready to start our capital campaign for some funding.
Right.
The initial construction price tag was $1 million more than we thought it was going to be.
I know.
So what we thought is it would be $4 million, the price tag came in about 5.8, so we want to fund it, we want to do
Right.
it. If we put our first pot of money in and still have 3/4 to go, I call it dusting money, we're just having it there, so when we are ready to move forward, I think that's when we do a special
Okay.
ordinance to add that funding.
Okay,
Um,
what's the
But
timeline on that, do we think?
if it takes a year to do a capital campaign,
Yeah.
I think it's something that we will start to discuss in this upcoming budget year as we start to move forward, but.
And I had a meeting with Laura Mears, she's gonna head up that campaign, so we're gonna have to get in the same room and figure out what the timelines look
Okay.
like.
But I don't think it's not a commitment, it is something that
Right.
we understand the
That's why I just
essential
wanted
of
to
it,
get an
yeah.
idea of like when we could start to look at, start to expect to see that, so we're not like out of the blue, get to sort of an idea of a timeline, cause I know that they're,
Yeah, absolutely, I think, to find $5 million,
Right.
$5.8 million is it takes a little bit of time.
Right.
So it could be
so we're
within
looking
the next
initially,
year.
like looking at like 1.5.
It could be, yeah, and
Yeah.
I think if the capital campaign is successful and we're able to find another large pot of money, we've got some interesting ideas of how to do that. We may be able to move this forward faster,
Okay.
or it may be a further conversation that we want to do. But I think publicly,
Right.
not to jump too far ahead,
No,
is,
yeah, I didn't
the
want
city's
to-
committed to a certain amount of money.
Good, okay.
That so if we're
I
gonna
just
ask
wanted to
people
make
pay,
sure that
yeah.
that's something that's on our minds. I see it on there and I'm like, okay.
Right.
I just had to bring it up.
Yeah.
I just had to bring it up.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm good.
Before we leave this slide, I did want to show you something else. You can see lease proceeds is empty, yet we had $910,000 of vehicles. That's unusual, and it's possible because, as you saw, we had a bump in the surplus, and a good use of it is debt avoidance. We were able to avoid entering into a lease and increasing the wall for our budget in future years by paying cash. So we put $910,000 into replacing some worn out vehicles. So this slide looks at our projects, and we saw that the Shoemaker Pond is funded by PAYGO. The City Park pedestrian bridge is funded from $50,000 of PAYGO. And
Hey Keith.
yeah,
Katie, I've had a council member ask me, can you just explain briefly what PAYGO is?
sure. It's when the general fund transfers money to the general capital project fund. The general fund is an annual budget. Use it or lose it in a year. Unless you can encumber by having a valid PO to a vendor, that money is gone. And projects, you can't always predict when that money is going to be used. So this allows us to have a multi-year fund where we can track the expenditures for the life of that project. Yeah. So from time to time, now the general fund's capability of sending money to the capital project fund is limited. You can see, if we look at the CIP plan, we try to put $700,000. We might estimate that, and we might have like a finalist of 1.2 million. Of what this year we only put 70,000 in. So that's way short of what we would typically expect to put 700,000. But you saw we put $910,000 of vehicles in. So that's where the need was. So that was how that worked out. Otherwise, you'll see that the projects that we were going to fund here, as you know, we have moved to 24 so that we don't have a bond. And we'll talk more about that. We've sent to you most of the project details that we've moved out of here and moved them to 24. So we'll get into that later. This line is where that we are asking you to authorize and give an appropriation for the fire engine. But since it takes a couple years for that thing to get here, we don't want $1.3 million sitting on the shelf. As Andy said, that's dusty money. So we'll just process paperwork called a declaration of official intent that lets it still qualify for later reimbursement from a tax-exempt bond, and we won't have debt service on it until it arrives. The next slide.
Just real quick, it takes
4 years.
Whoa, it's growing.
The rescue truck, it's not
Whoa.
supposed to be here
26.
26.
Crazy.
So you got to order a truck 4 years in advance.
It's supposed to be here when?
2026.
Something we paid for in FY23 is begin 26. And so this $1.3 million truck
7 years.
that we want to do in this year's budget, we'll see in 29.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I don't want to stress anything.
So I'm
Your
just
grandkids can take a ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
I was getting ready to say, this is about the schedule of my kids cleaning.
Oh my goodness.
I would save the details for the capital projects for Waterworks for when Waterworks comes to see you.
Yes.
Just in total, we have $942,000 in PAYGO. We're reallocating for $585,000. We have bond of $12 million. That would be declaration of official intent. We would not issue it in 25. And then we have some items that we leased in the amount of $920,000. This is a look at the general fund debt service. You can see that $4.4 million that we saw in the slide earlier. That is only $74,000 more than the prior year. This is a slide where I'd just like to give you some perspective about time, how things look. You can see at the top, this is measuring the debt service increase, Parks and Rec increase. This is since fiscal year 12, so that's a long time, that's 13 years. But it's showing you that public safety has had a tremendous increase. The amount of money is listed down below. You can see public safety has increased by $16 million over the 13-year period.
Is that, I'm sorry, Keith, is
Yes,
that
sir.
a combination of police and fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
And over on the right, I've just noted that I just wanted you to see the relationship to how much are our taxes going up compared to the expenses. And you can see that over that time, same period, that our taxes increased by $12 million, and that's pales in comparison to the $26 million that our expenses went up. Public safety alone went up 16 million versus our taxes only went up 12 million. So this is one of the things that we'll talk about, where that there's a lot of pressure on a sustainable budget going forward. The next slide shows that I mentioned earlier that the trash fee was proposed to go up from $69 to $71, or a 3% increase. This is showing we didn't have a chance to do another survey this year, so these other jurisdictions were showing the trash fee for last year. But you can see we're still in line at $71 with other jurisdictions.
Okay.
Okay, the next slide is where I am drilling down, showing you more about where our cash is and how it compares to what our minimum balances are. A while back, we established that for maintenance, we should keep about $1.5 million for emergency maintenance. For opportunities to increase the capacity, we should have in the impact for water 500,000 and impact for sewer 500,000, or a total of 2.5 million. The balances in these accounts is shown, and that the revolving we have 1.2 million, or we're short of our objective of 1.5 million by 250,000. But the impact funds for water is over the minimum by 887,000, and the impact for sewer is over 529,000. So what's relevant is we have a total of 1.1 million that we can put to work. And I've noted that at the council level, we might decide to put that money to work. And so that's maybe a decision that we're going to look at and come and make a recommendation for that. However, the operating, if minimum is 3 months of operating expenses, that would be 2.7 million. We actually had a deficit of 168,000. So this is where, again, it shows that the water sewer fund's liquidity is not sufficient. It has we're under the minimum by $2.8 million, which is why we recommended an increase of water sewer rates.
5%.
So the next,
What's the impact? What's gross about 18 million, 19 million gross?
what the
Sewer and water? More than that?
I don't carry that number in my head.
Okay, I'm trying to remember.
Come on.
This is about $1 million bucks. It's about $1 million
What are you
bucks in
doing,
revenue.
man?
I know, it's bad. That's why I'm getting out of here. It's all gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
404 file not found, right?
Yeah.
But it'll make about, I was trying to
don't
figure
blame
around, no, it's about $1 million.
Look,
$1 million in
We
potential
don't blame you
surplus,
at all.
assuming
We know.
costs don't rise up.
Well, last year we had an operating loss, but then we had other income grants and stuff, and we really about broke even. We had about 220,000 we saw on that slide in
Yeah.
23 net bottom line. But that we just saw. I can remember that because we just looked at it about
Yeah.
10 minutes ago. But this slide shows last year I did the folks that were here remember that we were set up to have overlap for 3 years of debt service, because the original wastewater treatment plant loan of about 30 million and the new to repair the failed wastewater treatment plant is a $30 million loan. The debt service overlapped. So we called MDE and we were able to negotiate. You can see where I've circled it in 27 and 28 to extend the debt service that was only $150,000 a year, so that the old 2008 loan ends in 2009. So we start up the new amortization in 2029. So that makes it so that the debt service remains relatively even over time. So that's a big relief to the water sewer fund, because if we had to pay both of them, we're not set up for that. And you can see what our cash position is.
Mhm.
So MDE did us a great service to set us up with an extension and redoing our term. So there's only 2 more slides left. Some takeaways. As I mentioned, our financial position based on our unassigned surplus is strong based on the FY23 audit, largely due to the unassigned fund balance. From what I understand from the Water Sewer Department, that we have been very aggressive in funding many of our water sewer projects. A lot of jurisdictions, they postpone stuff. That's the equivalent of having an unfunded liability. It's just, you have all these liabilities that aren't on the books because you didn't fund them, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and that's a buildup and it explode later. We're not doing that. Now, we have had the surprise of the PFAS.
Yeah.
So that contradicts what I'm saying a little, but that just popped up out of nowhere. It was a pop-up storm. Otherwise, for the last 10 years, I think that they've done a very good job of looking forward and funding our stuff as it's needed, so that's fantastic. Some of the weaknesses, as you know, the budget, as I mentioned earlier, we have trouble finding the funds to send from the general fund to the capital projects to fund the capital projects that we would like to fund. In our general fund revenues, as we saw, we can count on the rising expenses. Medical costs are going up 6 to 8%. Our compensation is rising. It's difficult to find these revenues to match the expenses. And I've said every year that the county's contributions for fire services don't represent their true share. That's still true. I know there was a big increase, but they're still not paying their fair share. Their tax differential, it is not right that the citizens of Salisbury are not receiving tax differential. So those are the main weaknesses as I see them.
Yes.
If there's any questions, we'd be happy to.
Leaving all your information here when you were talking. Whoa, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
We'll be in good hands.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Sandy would be great.
Thank you.
That's a motivation. Detective. Like Keith said. She's like a little detective.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes.
We got so lucky.
I know we're up to, oh, I'm sorry. I was going from the take away the weakness part and then the next slide. But you're on another side.
That was the end right there.
Oh, okay. Okay, here are my questions, and I'll wait for Mayor Taylor to come in because they're definitely going to be directed to the administration. Hello.
What administration?
Right. Woo-hoo.
They ran.
John, they left
They
you
knew
to
you
fend for
had some
yourself.
questions, so they left.
They skedaddled. They said questions. What?
Because one of the things that I know the council and the city in general has been talking about for forever, even as far as I can even remember, even before I even got on council, is I want to hone down on the fire service agreement, and I want to hone down on the tax differential.
Bing, bing, bing.
I am tired of playing around with that, and I'm tired of our citizens having to pay for other people's services, and I'm tired of paying for services that I will never receive.
Yep.
And when people tell me that
Councilwoman
that
Blake.
the taxes in,
I don't want you to exhaust let's just wait until the administration comes back so that they can hear this full tune. I don't want you to have to repeat this.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
good.
you.
So if you want
Yeah.
to just pause and.
hello, yeah, because enough's enough. We need a plan at this point.
Are they right out there?
I don't know where
Could
they're
you see if they could come in, because we're
I don't know if they're out there.
diving into police.
Yeah, let us
Yes.
know if you have to use the restroom or excuse yourself politely. Ms.
And I
Thompson.
moved the trash can back here.
I
Miss
was just
Thompson
getting ready to
also
thank you
calls
for
that,
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about
So we
that.
wouldn't have to keep
That's
going
okay,
down
I'm
the
waiting for Mayor Taylor because in the, what I'll be discussing when he can get back in here is the weakness slide, the takeaways and the weakness. We do have a lot of strengths, and I always appreciate pulling up strengths because, we get so criticized for, but the two weaknesses that I do want resolved with this year coming up is this, the fire service agreement. I'm no more that's tick tock out for me, and the tax differential, that same thing. Those are the two things that I know for decades that we've been talking about, and I think it's time to come to an actual plan of action, what we're doing, and I just want to hear either what's being done or what is our plan moving forward, so we're just not constantly in a financial bind over those two particular issues.
And our residents being in a
Yeah, we're
financial bind
not
because they're
gouging
being
their eyes
taxed.
out.
Because they're being taxed twice and we're having to raise costs and that's just not fair.
Hang tight. I'm sorry. Is he way out there?
He went to
is
the
he?
bathroom.
He went to
Okay,
the-
gotcha. So let's just pause. I want to make sure
Yeah.
we're not repeating. And
Yeah.
let's just pause 1 second.
I'll take a snooze.
Negative.
Not too long, please.
If you hear me snoring,
I'm here to say just don't snore.
I'll kick her under the table, she knows.
you hear me snoring.
Yeah.
Is there a restroom this way, or do I have to go?
All the way down.
You have to
Okay.
go all the way to the.
He actually uses the bathroom in our building. So
So hop, skip, and jump.
Right.
No, it's gonna right down the hall.
he just, I don't think he knows. I can find out.
He goes through Unity
Yeah.
Square. I got you. Just wanted, yeah.
Gotcha.
We are
To
still
the basement.
recording.
Oh, he went
I
to-
know.
We're staying.
That's why.
It's a good thing I can
Look,
crack
guys, we gotta
that.
pace ourselves,
Oh,
cause
yeah,
this is
no,
the
yeah.
beginning, can we just like,
He went to the basement.
Well, they really are now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
what are you giving him with?
He said they'll cut that from the
Yeah.
from the record.
yeah.
And I'll cut it from the audio.
Yeah.
I have learned how to do that now.
That's good.
I do that a
I
lot
learned
on
the
our
hard way.
closed sessions. I have to do
Oh,
that.
same. Chris, what angle
Go
does
for
this
it.
show?
Yeah.
What angle?
Yeah.
I know me, but like if I go, or is it the whole room?
It's the whole
Oh,
room.
room.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's
Just
raised-
That's wide shot.
Just because I have my
This-
Invisalign, so when I take these, when I eat a donut, they'll see, and I'm not ashamed of it. So y'all just
You-
see,
you-
take
you-
my
You have
take my
to-
teeth
Okay,
out.
let's
Yeah,
take them out.
Take him out. I'll take mine out. I'll cut him.
Don't mix them up.
You have to pull
Yeah.
I don't think he can mix. I don't think
Yeah,
he can
just
mix
like-
it up with mine.
Oh, that's funny. Don't
You better come on, because we are fading real quick.
I was gonna say, we're checking out real
See,
fast
the whole
here, this
thing,
is,
I got-
it
I
is
got
only,
four.
it is not even 10 a.m.
There's a lot of
guys,
pressure on
let's
Chris
keep it
to
together,
keep that.
let's keep
Yeah,
it together,
right.
let's keep it
They're
together.
clear.
You
They're
have a lot of
clear.
editing to do.
That's what I
Right.
said. Mine's a different.
Yeah.
I got the audio. You can.
Take care of
Dr. Curry in Delaware Eye Institute.
Okay.